not all games are for everyone, and that might seem like a very obvious kind of statement, but the reason I bring it up is because this is a conversation that happens, I swear, probably every 6 months on Twitter, on YouTube, TikTok, whatever, usually in regards to Souls games or like Souls adjacent games like the Hollow Knight games, where you have a game at a set difficulty. There's no easy, medium, hard, extra easy mode for these games. The game is as it is, and you have to kind of approach it the way it's built. Otherwise, I mean, you're just not going to see the end credits of this game. And over the years, there's been this constant back and forth of like, is it, are we locking out players who would otherwise enjoy these games because the game's too hard, it's whatever, or accessibility features for people with disabilities, also a lack of, usually with Soulsborne games, there's usually no pause button. I think Sekiro is the only game from FromSoft in the Soulsborne lineup, and even that one's like, some people will say it's not even a Soulsborne game, but it's the only one with a dedicated pause button outside of like Armored Core, which I'm not counting those games. But, so all of that being said, yeah, look, I think the honest reality is if you're going into a game expecting something that it's not designed to be, then you're already setting yourself up for failure, for disappointment. And while I can understand from one side, people are like, okay, again, people in different circumstances, different, I've heard this one before, like, oh, a parent with a child, the parent's playing a game or whatever in their living room, then the child's about to go do something that's going to potentially harm themselves, so the parent needs to go and help that child, but oh no, the parent was in the middle of a boss fight, and they can't pause the game, so now they've, died in the game to go help their child. I'm gonna be honest, if there's a moment in your mind of like, oh, if I, don't defeat this boss before I help my child, then what am I gonna do? Put the controller down. Your child is more important than the game. And while I get it, there's a level of like frustration coming back to it. In all but like 2 Soulsborne games, your health items completely replenish, and most other items you're gonna be able to find pretty easily again. Your child is more important than your video game. I'm sorry. Look, and I love these games. I have hundreds of hours in these games. I have done multiple runs through Elden Ring, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro. Like, yes. Look, I will talk up and down about how much I love those games. But if I knew in a moment that someone very close to me was in danger, that I needed to help them, a pause button or not, I'm chunking the controller. I'm going to go do what I need to do. So I think people throwing out like extreme examples like that, to like almost like a gotcha, like, oh, well, what about in this scenario? Well, guess what? In that scenario, it really doesn't matter. Like there are priorities, and if a Souls game is competing for your like on your priority list of attention with someone in need, your child, whatever, then you need to reevaluate a few things. But, and like the whole reason for the lack of the pause button to begin with, I'm gonna get to difficulty here in a second, but the lack of a pause button in general, like the whole concept behind it, is because you were entering a game of just complete immersion. There is no pause button. There are pause-like mechanics in the game, like resting at a bonfire, Site of Grace, where your character has these like moments of like rest in the game that are essentially pauses, but they're not like, you have to actually go to them. You can't just like pause at any given moment. But as the series has progressed, those locations have become more and more frequent throughout the game, so it's not like I'm going 30 minutes without seeing one. You can usually find one like right around the corner. It's not that big of a deal. Or just go back to the main menu for a little bit and then go back in, because usually the game will save where you are in the game and it'll just plop you back where you need it to be. The pause button thing is just never made sense to me, why people get like so up in arms about it. But so now I'm going to talk about like the difficulty side of it. And I think that's people from the outside looking in, I think is a big part of this, where it's like, oh, I see this almost like in-group of people who have played these games, beaten these games. They're a very tight-knit community, and I'm like looking in from the outside, and they look like they're having a bunch of fun. I wish I could be a part of that, but for whatever reason, you just haven't clicked with those games. The mechanics, they don't make sense to you, and so you kind of have this like feeling like you're on the outside. I get that, because it took me about 3 or 4 attempts, like 3 or 4 starting a new game on Elden Ring before I finally got to the one that clicked with me, and I saw it to the end. And then I saw it to the end 3 more times and got that platinum trophy. I understand, because I had friends who were playing these games. It's like, man, they sound like they're having, just an amazing time with these games. They're enjoying these despite the difficulty. I wish I could get it, and for years and years I couldn't, and then it eventually clicked. So I understand that mentality, because I've been there. Believe me, I've been there. But I think removing that aspect from the games removes so much of what makes these games special to the people who do finish them, that do see them to the end. It kind of creates this sense of community of like, we've been through the exact same scenarios. We're all approaching these areas and bosses at the same difficulty, essentially, and we're finding our own ways to get through it, whether it's being very creative with different builds, just running strength, what have you. And it creates this bond, this shared community of, we've been there, we've done it together. I think removing that and then adding difficulty selectors, you're removing such a big part of that community, where it's like, I don't think it destroys the community, but I think that is a huge part of the community. And I think that is why something like when Lies of P introduced that in its DLC, it was pretty controversial. But also, I've just not heard of anyone using those difficulty selectors. As far as I'm aware, I'm sure there's a few people, but when people talk about the game, they're always just playing it at the original difficulty, because that is just such a part of how the community, even Lies of P, that's not even a FromSoft game, but it's kind of been like co-opted in with like a lot of the other FromSoft Souls games, because it's so similar and feels so much like a FromSoft game. And I just don't notice people really talking about it anymore, because I get the feeling that they're not using those difficulty selectors anymore. Like, you're actively removing part of the experience. I think one of the best ways I can compare this is to another game, a game that I've purchased, I've put in a few hours, and it never clicked with me. It's Arc Raiders, which is an extraction shooter, and I've played it for a little bit, and I like the mechanics of it. I like how it plays. It feels good to play, and it just never clicked with me for whatever reason. But being upset at the lack of a difficulty selector, at the lack of a pause button in the Souls games, would be essentially like me going into Arc Raiders and getting upset that when I lose a match, I've lost my entire inventory on my character. Man, I've been grinding for some of this gear for hours, and now it's just completely gone and probably raided by like another player. But guess what? That's part of the experience. Like, I'm going into that game knowing that that is part of what makes this game appealing. Like, it is part of the stress level of it. Like, oh, will I get to the end of this this time I have on the map? Will I be able to extract with all of my stuff and even more stuff? Or am I gonna get caught last minute trying to extract, and then I get defeated and I lose everything? Like, that's part of the experience. Is it stressful? Yes, but that's why a lot of people go back to these games. It's because of that stress, because of that heightened adrenaline rush you get. It's the exact same thing with Souls games. And adding a mode to Arc Raiders where it's like you never lose your stuff, you're removing a core element of what makes that game as an extraction shooter work. Removing the difficulty, adding difficulty selectors to decrease the difficulty of the game ruins the experience, in my opinion. And I think that's the best way for me to really compare what changing those dynamics in the Souls games is to another game, a game like Arc Raiders. And I get it, accessibility features, what have you, and as much as I hate that there are potentially people out there for whatever reason, disabilities, that are unable to play Souls games, I don't think that should be a reason for the artist behind the game to completely abandon what their intended goal for the game is. They should be working on the game that they want to create, and then it's up to the market to decide, is this something that we're interested in? And I think given the numbers for sales for not only Elden Ring, but the rest of the Souls, FromSoft Soulsborne genre, they found something that worked. And again, I get it. Looking at, from the outside looking in, it can be like, man, those people are having a lot of fun. I wish I was a part of that. Like, yeah, I look at it and I see people enjoying Arc Raiders. They're having a great time. It doesn't click for me. It really doesn't. Like another game like Minecraft, a huge game, people love it, generational game, never clicked for me, never did. It would be like me getting upset that there isn't like an auto build function in Minecraft that'll just like almost AI generate, just populate my entire world. I understand. I 100% get the appeal of Minecraft. It's not for me. It just never clicked for me. So just kind of, I guess, rounding out this discussion, look, there's just going to be, you're going to come across games that just aren't, they're not going to be for you, and that's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe you approach a game and you're like, man, I really want to get into this, and then eventually it does click. And that's kind of how I was with Souls games. Like I was like, this is gonna be the one. I'm tired of the defeat. I'm gonna push forward. And guess what? I was so much happier. I did that. And I felt very accomplished as a gamer for that, to push forward. Again, that's so much of the experience is pushing through those hard things to come out on the other end. And then experiencing the art direction, the music, the lore, like that's all just part of it. And to be upset because the game developer didn't develop the game with you specifically in mind, again, it's like getting mad at Arc Raiders for not having a mode where you don't lose all your stuff. Like you're getting upset at the game for being what it's trying to be. And that just, again, you're projecting your wants onto the game rather than what the game is trying to do itself. And you know what? There's games that have done that, and the market doesn't like it. People don't want to play it. But there's other games, like Souls games, like extraction shooters, where people absolutely love these things. And it's up to you to decide, is this something for you? And you know what? There's no shame in looking up guides for these games to help it be easier for you to get into. Using summons in Elden Ring, guess what? There's nothing wrong with using the mechanics that are built into the game that the game developers created. That's why it's there. There are things in these games to make them easier. It's just not a, here, let me just select the difficulty. You just might have to go through a few more steps to bring that difficulty down a different way, by using summons, by using, more magic projectile type weapons, things like that. But those are things that you can do to, maybe make it more accessible for you. But again, getting upset at the developers for not making it specifically accessible for you or easier for you or what have you, again, we're putting creatives in boxes, and if it's clicking for the vast majority of people but not for you, it's okay. There's lots of movies I've watched that I was like, everyone loves this, and this one's not clicking for me. And you know what? I went about my day. I didn't sit there and say, man, what an awful movie that was, and try to trash everyone who likes it. It was like, it wasn't for me. Sometimes I think being intelligent with how you critique media is being able to look at something and say, that's very good. It was very well made. It wasn't for me. I can't get into musicals, but I can sit and watch a musical film and say, that was very well made. It's not for me, and go on with my day. And it's the exact same thing with video games. I think that's how you gotta approach some of this stuff, rather than sitting there with your arms crossed being like, well, why, they should be doing this and this and this and this so that now I can be a part of it. No, they shouldn't be. If you can't get into it the way it is, then maybe it's time we find something else. It's so funny because I had someone in my TikTok comments not too long ago. My post was about Bloodborne, and their response was, you're fighting all these big creatures. It never made sense to me that, the way the combat works, it would have made more sense if it was more like grand and epic, like the God of War games. And my response was, buddy, I think you just need to play the God of War games. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're going in expecting or thinking that the game should be this thing, and it's not being that. Bloodborne, it does not play at all like either the old or new God of War games. It just doesn't. They're completely different things. And guess what? The God of War games, absolutely great. Bloodborne, Soulsborne games, also absolutely great. two vastly different like genres of video games, and it would be like me going into God of War and being like, oh, this doesn't play like a Soulsborne game, this sucks. What, you know, like that is just yeah, craziness to me. But we need to get back to a place where we're okay to say, you know what, you know, this doesn't click for me, I'm gonna go find something else. And then maybe I come back in a different part of my life, just like me with Elden Ring, and then that's the time there we go, boom, it clicks, and I'm in now. You know, I've had that with movies, I've had that with video games, with music I've listened to a band, I'm like, I don't like this. Come back 3-4 years later, I listen to them again, fall in love with them. And that's just how we go through life sometimes too. Like when different media finds us at one point in our life, it might not click. Later in our life, that's when it makes sense. And I think that's, you know, once you stop trying to force yourself to get into things, to like things, you're just going to find yourself a happier person when it comes to engaging with media. So that's all I really had to say on this. Something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and figured I'd make kind of a full video talking about it, because I don't know, I think more people need to just be okay with enjoying the things that they do like, and not trying to like things just because they feel like everyone else is and they feel like they're not part of the in group. If you like this video, hey, look, give it a like, give me a sub, hit that, you know, bell button too. Drop me a comment. What do you think about all this? Like, do you agree? You disagree? Like, this can be a nuanced topic, and I want to read and see what other people have to say about this, because, you know, maybe there's stuff I've looked over, maybe there's other experiences from other people where they're like, well, but what about this and this and this? Like, I'm very much open to that, so I want to hear what other people have to say about this as well. Also, go follow me on TikTok. I got my link in the description here. I like to post a lot of like short form content there as well and have a lot of fun. So thank you so much, guys, and I will catch you all in the next video.